Chapter 3. Goosey Goosey Ga Ga Ga, or the superknowledge we are losing. Footnote, Goosey Goosey Ga Ga Ga, the first line of a popular Russian folk song. The song accompanies a children's game in which a group of children, representing a flock of geese, are fleeing home from their feeding grounds while another child, as a wolf, tries to catch them. We started heading off from the lake, Vladimir leading the way. He had changed somehow. His analytical and concentrated mood had given way to one of joyfulness and excitement. Sometimes he would do a pirouette as he walked along, or a little leap into the air, as he explained to me, "I never looked after bunny rabbits, Papa. I did something else. I'm not sure what to call it. Gave birth? That will not do. Created? Not really. Now I remember. I think in your civilization it is called sitting on eggs. So I sat on some eggs." "What do you mean you sat on some eggs? That's some other hen's job, or some kind of other bird's." "Yes, I know, but in my case, I had to sit on them myself." "What for? Tell me everything, and in the proper order." "All right, in the proper order. Well, it happened in this order. I asked Grandfather to help me find some eggs laid by wild ducks and wild geese. At first, Grandfather grumbled a bit, but then 3 days later, he brought me 4 large goose eggs, along with 5 duck eggs, which were smaller. Next in order, I dug a little hole in the ground and put some deer manure in the bottom, along with grass stalks, and then I covered them over with dried grasses, and then on top of this, I placed 2 sets of eggs Grandfather had brought me. What was the manure for? For warmth. Eggs need warmth to hatch, and they need to feel warmth from above, too. Sometimes I lay down on the ground myself, covering the hole with my stomach. When it was cold or rainy, I assigned this task to the bear. How did the bear keep from crushing the eggs? Well, you see, even though the bear is big, the hole containing the eggs is pretty small. He lay on top of the hole, and the eggs were at the bottom. Sometimes I would have the she-wolf guard the eggs. Other times I would sleep on the ground nearby myself, until they started to hatch. It was so wonderful to watch them hatching. Not all of them made it, though. From the 9 eggs I started with were born 2 gooselings and 3 ducklings. I fed them grass seeds and crushed nuts and gave them water to drink. Whenever I fed them, I would invite various creatures living in our territory to watch." "What for?" "To show them how I cared for these little chicks, to help them understand that they should not touch them, but that they should protect them instead. I would also sleep beside the hole where the gooselings and ducklings were born, except on cold nights or rainy nights when I had the bear take over for me. The chicks nestled into his warm coat, and it made it very nice for them. Next, if I am to proceed in the proper order, I put up stakes around the hole, with which I made a wicker fence from the branches, and put up branches above the nest as well. As the gooselings and ducklings grew, I learned to climb out of their hole. I would walk around their nest and make short whistling sounds. Upon hearing this, they would immediately climb out and run after me. They tried running after the bear, but I trained them out of it. The bear can travel quite a distance, and the birds not make it in one piece. But nothing happened to them. They grew up, feathers appeared, and they learned to fly. I would toss them up in the air to help them along. Then they began flying off on their own, but they always returned to their nest. When autumn came, and a whole lot of birds started gathering in flocks to fly south, my grown-up ducks attached themselves to a whole flock of ducks, and my geese joined a flock of geese, and they all flew off to warmer climates. But I was almost certain that they would return in the spring, and they did. How fantastic that was, Papa. They came back, and I heard their delightful cry, ga, ga, ga. I ran over to the nest and began calling, I fed them grass seed and some nut kernels, which I had ground up beforehand. They took the feed right out of my hand. I was so happy, and all the creatures around heard the cry and came running oh so happily. Look, Papa, here we are. Look. There, in a secluded spot between two currant bushes, I saw the nest my son had fashioned, but there is no wildlife to be seen anywhere around. You say they've come back, but there aren't any birds here. Not at the moment. They've flown off somewhere to have a stroll or look for food. That is why they are not here right now. But look, Papa. As Vladia pushed the branches aside to widen the opening, I caught a glimpse of 3 nest holes. In one of them lay 5 small-sized eggs, probably duck eggs. In the other, just one slightly larger, a goose egg. Wow, that means they have come back, and they're laying eggs, only just a few. Yes, Vladia said in excitement. They have come back and are laying eggs. They could lay more if I took some of the eggs out of the nest and fed the mothers more often. I looked at my son's happy face, but could not fully comprehend the reason for his joyful excitement. I asked him, "What are you so fantastically happy about, Vladia? I know none of you, either you or your mama or your grandfather, eat eggs, which means that your actions cannot be called work or a job since there's no practical benefit from it." You think so? But remember, other people eat birds' eggs. Mama says it is all right to use anything that the animals the animals themselves give to man, especially for people who are not accustomed to a vegetarian diet. What have other people got to do with your activities here? I've decided that something needs to be done so that people living on their domains can be free from the burden of so many household tasks, or almost free, so that they have time to think and reflect. This is possible if you understand God's intent in creating our world. I find delight in the science of getting to know his thoughts. It is certainly the grandest science of all. It is something that must be known. We need to learn, for example, why he made the birds fly south in the autumn, but they do not stay in those warmer climates, but come back in the spring. I've thought a lot about this, and I have guessed that he did this so that man would not be burdened during the winter time. In winter, birds cannot find food for themselves, and they fly away. But they do not stay in the south. They come back. They want to be useful to man. This is God's intent. There is much for man to learn from what our Creator has conceived. So what you're suggesting then, Vladia, is that ducks and geese can live in every domain, lay their eggs, feed themselves, and then fly off in the autumn and come back in the spring? Yeah, quite right. After all, it worked with me. Yes, I see. It really did work with you. But there's just one concern that I have. It will probably upset you to hear this, but still, I have to tell you the truth, just so you don't go looking ridiculous with your proposal. Tell me the truth, Papa. See, there's this science that we call economics. Economists are trying to figure out what is the best way of handling the production of various goods, in this case eggs. In our world, a lot of chicken farms have been set up where a whole bunch of chickens are kept in one place. They lay their eggs, and afterwards these eggs are shipped off to grocery stores. People can go to these stores and easily purchase as many eggs as they need. It's all worked out to ensure the least expenditure of labor and time on a per unit base. What does expenditure of labor mean, Papa? It refers to the quantity of time and resources spent on the production of a single egg. You have to carefully work out what's going to be the most efficient method of production, and that will be the best method. Fine. I shall try to work it out, Papa. When you work out the whole thing, you'll understand, but to figure it out, you need expense statistics. I'll try to get them from some economist. I can calculate everything right now, Papa. Vladia gave a bit of a frown, evidently concentrating, and after a minute announced, -2 to infinity. What kind of formula is that? What does it refer to? The efficiency of the divine economy is expressed in an infinite series of numbers. Even starting from 0, modern scientific economics is already 2 points down. You have a pretty strange method of calculation there. I can't fathom it. Can you explain how you arrived at that figure? I set the benchmark for our current case at 0. All the expenses involved in a chicken factory, its construction, Maintenance and delivery of eggs to stores are summed up into the figure of -1. What do you mean -1? These expenses should be expressed in rubles and kopecks. Footnote: kopek, a coin worth 1/100th of a ruble. Ruble? Ruble. It is derived from the Russian word for spear, kope, pronounced kapyo, in reference to a warrior piercing a dragon with his spear, a scene depicted on early Russian coins. The word ruble itself is derived from the verb rubit, or cut with an axe. Early coins represented a silver band cut into rectangular pieces. Monetary units are relative and will always vary, and so they are not significant in this methodology. They need to be lumped together under the arbitrary value of -1. Whatever expenses there are, in terms of a zero benchmark, they can be expressed as a -1. Okay, where did you get the second minus figure? It's the quality. It cannot be very good. The unnatural maintenance conditions and the lack of variety in feed cannot help but lower the quality of the eggs, and this gives rise to another value of -1. So we get -2 altogether. Okay, let's say you're right. But in your case too, there are huge expenditures of time. Here, tell me, Vladimir, how much time did you spend, as you put it, sitting on the eggs and then feeding the ducklings and gooselings and watching out for them? 90 days and nights. So 99 times 24 hours. And all that, my bad. So 90 times 24 hours. And all that in aid of producing no more than a few dozen eggs. And that only at the end of the year. For people living in their domains, it would be much more efficient to buy some little chicks at a market, hatch them over the winter with the help of an electric incubator, and in 4 or 5 months they'll start laying. In the second year, before winter sets in, they're generally slaughtered, since their laying capacity goes down by the 3rd year. So they kill them and then start raising a new batch. That's technology for you. That's the technology. Sorry. That's the technology of never-ending burdens, Papa. You have to feed the chickens every day, store up food for the winter, and every year raise a new batch of chickens. Sure, you feed them and raise new ones, but thanks to modern technology, isn't nearly as time-consuming as your alternative. But those 90 days will launch a program that will last forever. Once they come back, the migratory birds will raise their young all by themselves. They will teach them how to get along with human beings and come back to their homeland. And they will go on doing this for thousands of years. In launching a program like this, man is passing it on to future generations of his family. He is giving back to them a little particle of the divine economy. 100 years from now, an expenditure of 90 days in calculating the cost of producing a single egg will count as minutes and continue to diminish with each passing year. But still, there are expenses, and you have not taken these into account. These expenses are offset by a powerful counterweight which is no less significant than what is produced by the birds. What counterweight? When birds once again fly from faraway lands back to their native woods and fields, people are delighted to see them. Thanks to their joyful and beneficial energy, many people's diseases are eliminated. But this energy is 90 times stronger when they do not merely fly back from the south, but come directly to you and start greeting the man living on the domain with their happy cries and their refrains of exultation. Their singing brings joy and strength not only to man, but to the whole space around him. Vladimir spoke with confidence and inspiration. It would have seemed foolish to continue arguing with him. I pretended to be absorbed in contemplation or to be figuring out something in my mind. I felt a little put out that there was nothing I could teach my son or even offer him a few hints on. What kind of upbringing or education do we have here anyway? Here is my son standing right in front of me, and yet he seems like a child from another planet or a different civilization. He has a different concept of life, a different philosophy and speed of thought. He can do instantaneous calculations, and it is clear, as I have been made aware, that even if I spent a year on computer calculations, whatever he comes up with will still be more accurate. It's as though everything inside him were turned upside down. Or perhaps it might be more accurate to ask, to what degree have we perverted our own lives, our concepts and meaning of life? All disasters have arisen from these perversions. No doubt this is all true, but still, I'm so anxious to find some way of being useful to my son. But how? With no explanations left, I asked him quietly and offhandedly, I'll give some thoughts to those economics of yours. Maybe you're right. But tell me, son, you've been playing with different tasks here and working them out. Have you ever had a really serious problem to meet? Balaji sighed deeply, and it seemed rather woefully. After a brief pause, he replied, Yes, Papa, I do have a really big problem, and only you can help me to solve it. Balaji was sad, while I, on the other hand, was delighted to find something, at last, where he required my help. And what does it involve, this big problem of yours? Part 2, a big problem. Remember, Papa, when I told you last time you were here, that I was preparing to go off into your world when I grew up? Footnote, see Book 6, Chapter 2, Conversation with My Son, especially the section, I shall make a universe girl happy. Yes, I remember. You said you would come into our world and find yourself a universe girl and make her happy. You'd build a kin's domain with her and raise children. I remember you telling me. So, you haven't abandoned your project? Not at all. I often think of the future, about that girl and the domain. I can picture in detail how she and I will live there together, how you and Mama will come visit, and see how the dream which that girl and I co-created together is being turned into a reality. Well, then, what's your problem? Are you afraid you might not find your girl? That is not the problem. I shall look for this girl and find her. Come, I shall show you another little glade, and you will see it all for yourself. You will sense what the problem is. Vladimir and I arrived at a small glade located right next door to Anastasia's. When we reached the middle of the glade, we stopped, and Vladimir invited me to sit down on the ground. Then, cupping his hands around his mouth, he gave a loud and extended cry. Ah! I don't know. First he cried out in one direction, and then another, and yet another. In just 2 or 3 minutes, there began a rustling in the treetops all around the glade, and a whole lot of squirrels could be seen leaping from branch to branch, gathering together on a single cedar tree. Some of them simply sat down on one of the branches and stared in our direction, while others, apparently the more restless ones, continued hopping from branch to branch. A few minutes later, out of the bushes came running 3 wolves. They sat down at the edge of the glade and also began looking our way. A sable came along and took up a position about 3 meters from the wolves. Then 2 goats appeared. They didn't sit down, but stood at the edge of the glade, their eyes fixed on us. Soon afterward came a deer. The last to arrive was a huge bear, noisily making his way through the bushes. He, too, sat down at the edge of the glade, panting all the while, saliva dripping from his tongue. He had probably been a long ways off and had to run for some distance. All this time Vladimir stood behind my back, with his hands on my shoulders. Then he took a few paces back from me and picked some herbs. Coming back to me, he said, "Open your mouth, Papa, and I shall give you some herbs to eat. This is so that they can see that I am feeding you from my hand, and they will not be upset at the sight of a stranger." I took the pre-offered herbs into my mouth and began to chew. Vladimir sat down beside me and put his head up against my chest and said, "Stroke my hair, Papa, so that they will fully calm down." I began stroking his light brown hair with delight. Then he sat down beside me and began to explain. "I realized, Papa, that God created the whole world as a cradle for his son, for man. The plants, the air, the water, the clouds, everything has been created for man. And the creatures stand ready to serve man with great delight. But we have forgotten, and now it is important to understand what services the creatures can perform, what their purpose and their destiny is. Even today, a lot of people are aware that a dog can guard the house, find lost objects, and aid in keeping one's home safe from intruders. A cat, of course, can catch mice that raid the larder, a horse as transportation, but all the other creatures have a specific feature and designation too, which should be understood. I have tried the best I could to determine the function of all that you see here. Now they are sitting there and awaiting my command. This is the 3rd year now I've been working with them to understand their purpose. Take, for example, the bear. Because of his big and powerful claws, he can dig an underground cellar, put supplies into it, and save it for the winter, and dig them up again in the spring. He knows how to bring honey from a tree hollow. Yes, I know, Vladimir. Anastasia explained that to me, told me that at one time people used bears as household help. Mama told me that too. But look what I have taught the bear to do. Vladimir rose to his feet and stretched out his right arm in the bear's direction. The bear drew himself up on his haunches, even seemed to stop breathing. When Vladimir clapped his hands against his thigh, the huge bear took several giant strides and lay down at the boy's feet. Vladimir squatted down beside the beast's enormous head, gave it a slap, and began scratching behind the creature's ears. The bear purred with pleasure. But when Vladimir got up, the bear did the same, watching the boy's every move. Vladimir went over to the edge of the glade where he found a dry branch and stuck it into the ground about 10 meters from where I was sitting. Then he returned to the edge and approached a small cedar tree about a meter high. He touched it and clapped his hands twice. Right off, the bear ran over to the cedar and sniffed it. Then an incredible thing started to happen. My son sat down beside me on the grass, and the two of us began watching as the scene unfolded before our eyes. The bear spent some time sniffing the little cedar. First, he would walk away from it as though measuring something, and then he would run over to the spot where Vladia's dry branch was sticking up. And all around the branch, he suddenly began scraping away the earth with his front paws, working furiously with his paws in their powerful claws. In the space of just a few minutes, he had dug a hole approximately 80 centimeters in diameter and about half a meter deep. He stopped to admire his handiwork, even stuck his head into the pit, probably to sniff it. After that, the bear ran over to the cedar Vladimir had indicated and began to dig the earth around it. When he had dug what amounted to a circular trench, the bear sat down on his hind paws next to the cedar, dug his front paws into the trench, and pulled the little tree out of the ground along with a sizable clump of earth. Rising on his hind legs, he held the clump between his front paws and headed over to the hole that he had dug earlier. He carefully sat down and lowered the clump with the cedar into the hole. It turned out the hole was about 15 centimeters larger than required. The bear backed off to take a look at his handiwork. Once more, he pulled out the cedar and set it to one side, while he filled in the hole just a little more before replanting the cedar. Now everything was just right. The bear backed away once more to inspect his accomplishment. This time, he was apparently satisfied, as he went back to the cedar he had planted and began filling in the crevices around the clump from which the tree was growing. He used his paw to scoop up the earth, stuff it into the crevice, and then pack it down around the newly replanted tree. It was quite a fascinating scene, but I had earlier witnessed how the squirrels brought dried mushrooms and nuts for Anastasia. Footnote, see Book 1, Chapter 6. Or how the wolves played with Anastasia and protected her from wild dogs. See Book 3, Chapter 12. Not only that, but a lot of people can observe all sorts of tricks with various animals just by attending a circus performance. My own dog, Kedra, also takes delight in carrying out a range of commands. Footnote, Kendra, a name derived from Kedr, Russian word for cedar or Siberian pine. What I witnessed in the taiga glade also bore outward similarities to a circus performance, except that it didn't take place in an arena surrounded by a high net, but in natural surroundings, as the performers were not circus animals living in confined cages, but free, or wild as we call them, dwellers in the taiga. They might well have seemed wild to us, but to my son, they were simply friends and helpers, just like our household pets and farm animals. However, I must point out one mysterious and incredible distinction in particular. The loyalty of household pets and farm animals can be explained by the fact that man gives them food and drink and provides shelter. People who go see animal acts at circuses may also notice that after each successful trick, the tamer rewards the lion or tiger, giving them some kind of treat or trifle he keeps on his belt or in his pocket just for that purpose. Circus animals, which spend years confined in cages, have no opportunity to hunt for their own food. They are fully dependent on man. By contrast, the creatures here in the taiga are absolutely free and fully capable of finding food and shelter on their own. Yet they still come. Not just come, but make an enthusiastic dash to respond to man's call and carry out his commands. They carry them out with considerable desire and even servility. Why? What do they get in return? Vladimir gave no food to the bear, but still the bear's joy was many times more clearly evident than shown by the circus animals upon receiving their treat. The bear that transplanted the little tree on Vladia's command stood there, shifting from paw to paw, his eyes fixed on the boy as though he wanted to repeat the action or perform some other task. It is strange how this huge taiga bear really wants to keep on doing something for man, and for a child at that. Vladimir was not about to set the bear any new task. He gestured the bear come over, grasped the fur on the bear's muzzle with both hands, roughed it a little bit, then petted the muzzle and said, "You are a super helper." Not like the goats. The bear purred with delight. This threatening creature sounded as though it was at the very pinnacle of bliss. Anastasia has said, "Such beneficial energy can flow from man as has never before been seen. Every living creature on the earth needs this energy just as it needs air, sunshine, and water. Even the sunlight is but a reflection of the great energy emanating from man. Our sciences have discovered a multitude of diverse energies and even brought about the artificial generation of electrical energy. They have split the atom and manufactured bombs, but how far and in what direction have our sciences advanced in studying the more significant and more important question as to the energy emanating from man himself? Is there any tendency towards studying this energy at all, including its mysterious capabilities, or studying man's abilities in general and his function in both our world and in the universe? Perhaps someone is trying, by whatever means available, to hinder man from knowing himself. And I mean actually hindering. It cannot possibly be man's destiny to spend years sitting in a casino or at a bar for a shot of vodka, or drudging away at a cash register in some store or a manager's desk in some office, even a supermodel or a president or a pop star. None of them come even close to man's most important purpose. And yet it is these very professions of our modern age, along with making money, that some enigmatic entity is promoting today as the most important thing in man's life. It is what we see in a good many of our films and TV shows, which concentrate on everything except the meaning of life. All they do is turn man into a banana head. Isn't that the reason wars are happening all over the place? And the earth is becoming more and more polluted? And people lose their sense of direction. They see no purpose in living, so they take to vodka and drugs? Who is supposed to stop all this rot that is taking place with our Earth? Science? Science isn't saying anything. Religion? Which religion? Where are the results? Maybe everyone needs to ponder this for themselves? Ponder it for themselves. To ponder, one must first think. But where? When? Our lives have been one giant bustle from morning till night. Every single attempt that has ever been made to ponder the meaning of life has been suddenly aborted. Selling magazines featuring half-naked, sensuous bodies? Oh, sure. Savoring sexual perversion? Oh, sure. Showing and telling about the beastly antics of pervert maniacs? Oh, sure. Writing and talking about prostitutes in the media? Oh, sure. But there is less and less talk about the meaning of man's life and man's purpose, and is becoming more and more a taboo topic. I glanced up from my contemplations to look at my son. He was sitting on the grass beside me, watching me intently. I thought he might have something more he wanted to show me, and I asked him, "What was it you were saying to the bear about goats, Vladimir?" I cannot, for the life of me, Papa, determine what their purpose is. Amusement, Vladimir. Their purpose is amusement. That was me. That was Carla talking. That was not in the book. Sorry. What's there to determine? Everyone knows what goats are for. They give milk to man. Yes, milk, of course, but perhaps there's something more that they can be taught. What more could they possibly... Why bother looking for something else? I've been watching them. Goats are capable of stripping barks off of trees and stumps. They can bite off branches from bushes. If you let them into a domain, they could cause harm to the plants. To stop that from happening, I'm trying to teach them to trim hedges around the domains. Trim? Yes, Papa, trim. After all, people trim hedges to make them more beautiful, either in a straight line or in different shapes. Grandfather told me that you call it landscape design or topiary art, but the goats do not seem to have any concept of what I want them to do. How are you teaching them? I shall show you. Vladimir reached for a rope made of nettle fibers woven together about 3 meters long. He fastened one end to a small tree and stretched the rope through a clump of bushes. Then, gesturing the 2 little goats to approach, he gave each of them a pat. He touched the bushes with his hand and even snapped up a small branch himself with his teeth. He said something to the goats, and they set about vigorously gnawing off the bushy branches. Each time they neared the rope border, Vladimir would give several tugs on the rope and make some disapproving sounds. The goats would stop for a time, holding their snouts up and looking inquiringly at the boy, but then go back to biting off the branches, paying no attention to the rope. You see, Papa, it's not working. They do not realize that they are supposed to trim the bushes in an even line. Yes, I see. Is that the problem that you were talking about? That's not the main problem, Papa. It's something else. Then what? You notice, Papa, how happily the different creatures came running to my call? Yes, I did. I've been working with them for several years now, and they've become accustomed to communicating with me, but only with me. They look forward to this interchange, and they want to be petted. But once I go off into your world, they will miss me. They will miss not having a man ever come to see them or call them and give them something to do. I feel that the communication with man and serving man has become the most significant focus in their life. Could they not communicate with Anastasia? Mama has her own circle, her own creatures she is friends with. Besides, she is very busy, and she does not have time for all of them. But you see, these... And here once again Vladimir pointed to the creatures still sitting around the edge of the glade. These I chose myself, and I am the only one, who has been working with them for the past few years. 3 months ago I asked Grandfather to be present with me at all our training sessions. Grandfather muttered, but he was always there beside me. Recently, he told me he would be unable to replace me. Why? He said he didn't have the same interest as I had in animal training. Once again, he began to mutter that I should not have spent so much time with the animals individually, and that I shouldn't have given them so much petting, and reminded me that these creatures look upon me not only as their leader, but as their child, too, since the older among them saw me when I was a baby and even nursed me. You see, I made some kind of mistake, and now I must definitely correct it. Only now I am no longer able to correct it all on my own. I looked at the creatures still sitting at the edge of the glade. They gave every indication that they were waiting for Vladimir to give some sort of instructions or to do something with them. I imagined how they would miss him if he were to go away, the same way my dog Kendra misses me when I have to leave my home in the country for days or weeks at a time. She has a warm little doghouse, and I don't keep her chained up. She's free to roam the fields or the forests or the village. I have a neighbor who feeds her every day. He makes kasha for her and gives her bones to chew on. Kasha, footnote, a traditional Russian and Eastern European porridge made with wheat, buckwheat, and other grains. But my neighbor tells me she misses you, Vladimir Nikolaevich. She often sits by the gate and gazes down the road for you to come home. And sometimes she'll whimper. And whenever I arrive, Kedra rushes headlong to greet me, rubs against my legs. Sometimes she's so enthusiastic she'll jump right up and try to lick my face, soiling my clothes with her dirty paws. There's no way I can train her to be not quite so ebullient in expressing her emotions. These creatures in the glade, all the time we talked, they sat there quietly watching us, looking the picture of composure. What do they want? After all, nobody is making them sit that way or wait on some kind of command from man. My God. My thought all at once bubbled up with absolute clarity and struck my heart. It was much more than just about these creatures sitting in a taiga glade. It was the realization that all the creatures on the earth have a specific purpose and await contact with the highest being on the planet, namely man. They have been created to help man fulfill his supreme mission. Like all life on the planet, they were created by God to help man realize his grand destiny. But man... I looked at the creatures in the glade and began to realize that my son really did have a serious problem on his hands. He simply could not abandon these creatures, nor could he bring himself to give up his dream about the girl he would be setting up a domain with. Yes, Vladimir, that really is a problem, I told my son. It doesn't look as though there's any solution, not one that we can find. There is a solution, Papa, but it does not depend on me. On whom, then? You are the one who can solve this problem, Papa. Me? Just how am I supposed to do that? There's nothing that I can do here, son. Part 3, there is a solution. I think, Papa, that you will be able to help me if you really want to, said Vladimir quietly. You think so? You see, I have no idea what to do. You may think so, but I have no idea. I was still sitting on the grass while Vladimir stood in front of me, looking me in the eye with some kind of imploring gaze, his lips whispering something inaudible. I could tell by his lips that he was saying one particular word over and over again. Then, without taking his eyes away, he said distinctly, "Sister. I earnestly beg of you, Papa, to bear me a sister, together with Mama. I shall nurse her and raise her myself. They will help me. We shall not distract you and Mama from your activities. I shall teach her, and when she grows a little, I shall tell her about everything. She will remain here with my creatures and my space. Bear me a sister, together with Mama, unless, of course, you are ill or too tired. That is, of course, if you can. Grandfather told me that men in your world often get ill and grow older faster because of their way of life there. The air is not fit to breathe and the water is foul. You are a little past 50 years old, Papa, but if you are tired, If your strength is pretty much exhausted, then spend 3 days with me. Just 3 days. I have everything all prepared, and a great deal of strength will be restored to you." My son was excited, and I interrupted him. "Wait, Vladimir, calm down. Of course I'm a little tired, but I think I'll have enough strength. That's not the point. In principle, I have nothing against giving you a sister, but when it comes to bearing children, a desire on the part of both parents is required." "I'm sure of it, Papa. I know for certain that Mama will not refuse. If you agree, let us not waste any time, but begin right now to prepare for the birth of my sister. I've been studying up on it. Grandfather has helped me a great deal. I've made calculations and have everything prepared. Stay with me 3 days and 3 nights, and do not go off anywhere, and do not get distracted by anything, Papa. Your energy and strength will increase." "What makes you think I don't have enough energy or strength, Vladimir?" "I think you have enough, but you shall have more." "Okay, I shall spend 3 days with you alone, but we must go and let Mama know." "I shall explain everything to her myself, Papa. I shall tell her that we have a common project. She will not go into specifics and will not object." "All right, then, let's get started." I even began to wonder what my son had prepared that would restore a great deal of strength and energy to man after only 3 days. And I shall say right off that the procedures he prepared may seem rather strange, but the sensation resulting from them on the 3rd day defies explanation in words or writing. It would not be appropriate either to say that a man becomes 10 or 20 years younger, though he may indeed look as much as 5 years younger, but on the inside, somehow everything inside me seemed to be working differently. Not only did I have new strength, but the world around me seemed just a bit different.